Joy! My luck had turned. At the top of the worn stone stairway, cut in the pylon, I met Biddy. She was dim as one of Cleopatra's Ptolemaic ghosts, in the darkness of the passage, but to me that darkness was brighter than the best thing in sunsets. "Salutation to Caesar, from one about to die!" I ejaculated. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean that both my feet are fast asleep, and I shall certainly fall and kill myself if I try to go one step further, up or down." "You, the climber of impossible cliffs after sea birds' nests!" she laughed. But she stood still. "I'm after something better than sea birds' nests now," said I. "The question is, whether it's not still more inaccessible." "Are you talking about Monny?" she wanted to know, in a whisper. "Sit down and I'll tell you," was my answer. "Oh, not here at the top of the steps, if it's anything as private as that," Biddy objected, all excitement in an instant. "Let's come into a tiny room off the stairway, which the guardian showed me a few minutes ago. There's a bench in it. You see, he's up there on the pylon roof now with Monny and Captain Fenton. I can't call him Antoun when I talk to you, it's too silly, and he'll probably be coming down in a minute. Then, if we stop where we are, we'll have to jump up and get out of the way to let him pass. And he's sure to linger and work off his English on us. I don't think we'll want to be interrupted that way, do you?" "No, nor any other way," I agreed. "Oh, but what about the sunset? We may miss it." "Hang the sunset! Let it slide down behind the dam if it likes." "I don't wonder you feel so, you poor dear," Biddy sympathized, "when it's a question of Monny, and all our hopes going to pieces, the way they are doing, every minute. There isn't a second to lose." So we went into the little room in the tower, which was lit only by a small square opening over our heads. We sat down on the bench. It was beautifully dark. I began to talk to Biddy. We had forgotten my feet, and I forgot Mrs. East. But I must tell what was happening to her at the time, as I learned afterward through the confession of an impenitent, before I begin to tell what happened to us. Otherwise the situation which developed can't be made clear. I left Cleopatra calling spirits from the vasty deep, or rather one spirit, the spirit of Antony. I am morally sure that any other would have been de trop. And sailing to her across the wide water from Shellal came Marcus Antonius Lark. I can't say whether she considered him an answer to her prayer or a denial of it. Anyhow, there he was, better perhaps than nobody, until she learned from his own lips, tactless though ardent lips, that he had come from Cairo to Aswan, from Aswan to Philae to see her. Then she took alarm, and remarked in the old, conventional way of women, that they'd better go look for the others. But Sir Marcus hadn't spent his time, money, and grey matter in hurrying to Philae from Shellal for nothing. Finding himself too late to catch us at Aswan, he had paid for a special train in order to follow his enchantress, the lady, and the boat. Taking a felucca with a fine spread of canvas and many rowers, which characteristically he bargained for at the Shellal landing place, he sailed across to the moored steamer, only to learn from Kruger that we had gone on our expedition to Philae. That meant a long sail and row for the impatient lover. For us, the longer it was, the better, one of the chief charms of our best day. But for him it must have been tedious, despite a good breeze that filled the sails and helped the rowers. On his way to the temple he met galleys going home to the enchantress Isis. An instant's shock of disappointment, and then the glad relief of realizing that the one he sought was still at the place where he wished to find her. There were only 4 obstacles which might prevent an ideal meeting. The names of these obstacles in his mind were Jones, Gilder, Fenton, and Borrow, and being an expert in abolishing obstacles, the great Sir Marcus began to map out a plan of action. Luckily for him, our small boat had moved out of Cleopatra's sight, as she sat and dreamed on the low temple roof, while we 4 obstacles disported ourselves on different paths of the high pylon. The 2 Nubians wished to play a betting game with a kind of Egyptian jackstones, and it was not desirable that the pensive lady should behold them doing it. Observing the graceful figure of Mrs. East silhouetted against the sky's eternal flame of blue, and at the same time noticing that she could not see the waiting boat, Sir Marcus got his inspiration. He knew that the 4 obstacles were somewhere about the temple. Now was his great chance while they were out of the way! And if he resolved to play them a trick, perhaps he salved his conscience by telling it that the obstacles, male and female, ought to thank him. Cleopatra probably thought, if she glanced up to see his boat, "Oh dear, another load of tourists," and promptly looked down to avoid the horrid vision. By the time Sir Marcus came within "how d'ye do" distance, he had bribed our waiting boatman to row away. This in order not to be caught in a lie. With our Nubians and their craft out of his watery way, he was free to fib when the time came. "Go look for the others?" he echoed Mrs. East's proposal. "Why, they've gone! I met them." "Gone! And left me behind when they knew I was here?" she exclaimed. "They can't have done such a thing." "I'm afraid there's been a mistake," replied Sir Marcus presently. "They certainly have gone. I met the boat. Borrow was expecting me to-day, you know, or maybe you didn't know. And when he saw me in my felucca, he stopped his to explain that evidently there'd been a contretemps. I'm sure Lark mispronounced that word. The temple guardian said a gentleman had arrived and taken the lady who was waiting off in a boat. Of course, Borrow thought I had come along and persuaded you to go with me, after telling the guardian to let him know. I expect the guardian's got mighty little English, and they say white ladies all look alike to blacks. He must have mixed you up with some other lady. I suppose my folks haven't been the only people at Philae since you came?" Mrs. East admitted that a number of creatures had come and gone, but she thought all had vanished before the departure of the galleys. "You see you thought wrong. That's all there is to it," Sir Marcus assured her. And having taken these elaborate measures to secure the lady's society for himself alone (Nubian rowers don't count), he proceeded to lure her hastily into his own boat, lest any or all of the obstacles should arrive to spoil his coup. That was the manner of our marooning. At the time we were ignorant of what was happening behind our backs, the sunset, for instance, and the only available boat calmly rowing away from the drowned temple of Philae. We were thinking of something else, and so was Sir Marcus, or he would not have forgotten the repentant promise he had made of himself soon to send back a boat and take us off. We were therefore in the position of unrehearsed actors in a play who don't know what awaits them in the next act, while those who may read this can see the whole situation from above, below, and on both sides. 4 of us, marooned at Philae, not knowing it, and night coming on. End of chapter 25, part 2.